All right. Hey, everybody. It's Ed O'Keefe, and welcome to this episode of the Ed O'Keefe Show. I literally just finished a chocolate chip cookie right here. Didn't I, Eddie? My little buddy, my 2.5-year-old Eddie, is sitting right next to me. And the reason I finished a chocolate chip cookie is because my no bread waffles are not here. They should be here any day now. So that leads us to who the sponsor for this episode is. No Foods. No Foods is the best alternative for gluten-free, grain-free, peanut-free, yeast-free, dairy-free, and I think it's soy-free as well. As you know, I'm an investor in this amazing food. It's paleo-friendly and pretty much any diet-friendly, and it tastes awesome. My little secret is every morning I have 2 waffles, 12 grams of each waffle, and then I'll have a little bit of a protein shake. Really healthy stuff. So check them out at nofoods.com. That's KNOWFOODS.com, or check them out on Amazon Fresh. Anyhow, let's get to the show. Today, I am interviewing a really, really good friend, ridiculously smart dude, Kamal. Let me see if I got his name right, even though he's one of my good friends, Ravikant. Kamal Ravikant. His book is called Rebirth, a fable of love, forgiveness, and following your heart. What's cool about Kamal is he is an author of a book called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It, where he shares his whole story of going into Silicon Valley, literally crushing it and then losing everything, and then what he needed to do to come back. We talk about this during the episode. The second thing we talk about is this fiction book that he put together called Rebirth, and just amazing principles about forgiveness, his relationship with so many different characters in the book, and how it was a story that paralleled real life for him. Just one thing you probably don't know, like, Kamal is a venture capitalist. He has a hedge fund. I invested in it. We have investments in businesses like Slack, like I think it's Ship, that's SHYP. And he's a really sharp guy. We don't go deep into that, but it gives you a perspective of this is a venture capitalist who's also a really amazingly spiritual, kind, and phenomenal fella. So I hope you enjoy this. If you like this, I will tell you, he was also on the Glenn Beck show. So yeah, check out the Glenn Beck show, and then tell Glenn, be like, hey, I heard of Kamal first on the Ed O'Keefe show. And we'll see where it goes from there. So with that said, I hope you're awesome, and I hope you enjoy the show. All right, everybody, we have my good friend Kamal Ravikant on the line. What's up, Kamal?
What's up, Ed? Good to be here. I love this photo of you on Skype with you and 2 little kids.
Yeah, that was in Colorado. Yeah, that was a trip we did. Those are my twins. That was about 2 years ago, man.
Yeah, they're adorable.
You know, one parenting tip. You want to know a parenting tip before we? Here's the parenting tip.
Please.
You know, travel when your babies are between the ages of 3 and 7 months. People think you can't travel. Those are actually awesome times to travel because their naps are totally they're on schedule, and they're not as mobile. And because once you hit like 9 to 12 months, the kids start learning how to walk, and then now you're off to the races. So travel. So speaking of traveling. We have our pilgrim here, our venture capitalist, pilgrim, author, and amazing man, Kamal Ravikant. So I told everybody about you a little bit. I got your book here. I'm stoked to have you on. So, yeah, Rebirth, the fable of love, forgiveness, and following your heart. So, man, I tell you, we'll get in the book in a little bit, but I just got to tell you, man, it's like what's beautiful about this book, I guess right at the beginning, I could say, is that I think I text messaged you this. It's like a good wine. You know, you don't want to rush through it, but then you get pulled into the story and you just start drinking more and more of it as you get deeper into it. I don't know.
Man.
Yeah.
That's a great metaphor.
Yeah, it is. It took me about 40 pages, you know, to like start getting like the story. And then once I got into it, I kind of flew through it. And it's really good stuff. You're going to get compared a lot to Paulo Coelho. Am I saying his name?
Yeah, Paulo Coelho.
Yeah. So tell my listeners a little bit about yourself, Kamal. Kind of, a little bit of background, I guess, where you came from, and then in the books you've written in the past, and we'll kind of dive into your past before we dive into your rebirth.
Into the present and the future.
Yeah, a little bit. Maybe we'll go chronologically. Maybe not. Who knows?
Well, I think if I would just say interesting waypoints in my life, I was a U.S. Army infantry soldier. I was in the 10th Mountain. I was in college for a year after high school, and I just left and joined the Army instead, and did the Army, then went to school and got a degree, and then I moved to Silicon Valley. Actually, I backpacked around for a while, and with no money in my pocket. People always like, oh, I'm going to wait till I have some money to travel. Man, I've done some of the best travels I've ever done. It's literally like a couple of dollars a day living in Europe on that, not Asia. And did that, and moved out to Silicon Valley and with no experience in it, and joined the startup boom and started building startups. And built some that did very, very well. Was part of some that did insanely well. Built some that blew up and did not do well. And now I run a venture capital firm that I built myself, and I invest in internet companies, some pretty well-known ones, and I love it because I get to invest in and play with the future. And also another thing I do is I write books. So one thing I'm starting to finally tell people that I didn't really tell for a long time is for like over a decade, while building companies at night and on the weekends or whenever I had time off, I'd be writing and rewriting obsessively and studying Hemingway and all the greats.
Really?
And collecting rejection letters, man. I could wallpaper a room with rejection letters. But each time I get a round of rejection letters, be depressed for a week or two and then say, okay, I'm going to become better. I'm going to teach myself to be better a writer. Eventually they're going to chase me.
Who's rejecting you? Like, what do you mean?
Publishers, agents, everybody.
Wow.
And then, but what's the interesting thing is I'm really glad, looking back, those rejections as a writer was the best gift I could have gotten. Because each time I had to reach into myself and decide, do I want to continue this? And if I do, how can I be better at it? And, if I'd had success early on as a writer, I would have been writing good stuff, but just like clever dribble, nothing useful. I had to go through life and I had to go through rejections and keep on working on the craft that allowed me to, like my first book that I self-published, right? A little tiny book, Sharing from the Heart. But the ability to write that book came from that decade of writing obsessively. And that little book has become one of the, huge viral hit. It was one of the best-selling books on Amazon 4 years in a row. It's called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. Then after that, I wrote a second book called Live Your Truth. These are both nonfiction. And then I've always wanted to write a story, a fable, a fiction, because I know that ultimately we learn best through stories.
Yeah.
I mean, we're wired that way, man. You got kids. What do you do at night? You read them stories, Our brains are just wired to incorporate lessons better that way than just a bullet point checklist, at least in a way that we can actually use them in our subconscious. So I set out to write this story, and I sold it to Hachette in the fall of 2015. And they were the biggest publishers in the world, and I was quite honored. The head of Hachette is the one who wanted to edit it, and I worked insanely hard on it. And, I wanted to learn all these life lessons that I've learned that I write about my other books. And, but in a story that as the character grows and learns and incorporates its lessons, the reader grows. And by the time the story is done, you've actually incorporated some of those life lessons into yourself. And that's my latest thing. It's called Rebirth, and it just came out last week. So bookstores everywhere, which is the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah. So hey, go buy it.
Please.
Yeah. It's awesome.
It's getting great reviews. Book lists reviewed really well. But more than anything, man, I'll tell you the first. I always put my email in my books, and I get lots of emails from readers. Yeah. So I already started getting emails about this, and the first one I got, I was like, oh man, it was beautiful. It was a woman. She said, I read your book, and I want to let you know that I got out of prison 8 months ago, and I've been having a very hard time, forgiving myself and getting in touch with my humanity, and your book really helped me. I was like, oh, man. It was like, you get these and you did the right thing. All that work you put in, all that time in front of the computer screen obsessively just trying to get crafted right. Yeah. So that's where I am.
Yeah, I wrote down, I have a lot of underlines in the book and a lot of quotes. And one of the quotes I wrote down was, everything must go in time. Why are you holding on so hard? The harder you squeeze, the more that leaves. I forgot who told you this in the book. I wrote it in the back of the book, but it was referring to the character who went on the pilgrimage. And so since we're kind of diving into the book a little bit, I guess come on. This is a story about a young man who goes on a 550-mile pilgrimage. Am I saying it correctly? Yeah, on the Camino de Santiago. And you didn't really know. I forget how he stumbled into it, but it was. Am I pronouncing the name right? Amit. Amit. After his father had passed away, and he just kind of. So how did now I know this is kind of inspired by some of your personal story, right? So correct. I don't know how much you're sharing, but let's kind of walk us through how this pilgrimage started in your own life, or in how you came up with this idea to take all these lessons that allowed you to come out the other side. Your teachings and your writings are very deep. They support people at a very soul level versus if people are looking for a quick read where they're just looking for a couple chuckles. This is definitely not the book for them at this point. However, if people are looking for something that's kind of I hate using the word kind of, life altering and mind expanding, Rebirth is a great read, and I would say this is a great time of year, but any time of the year is a great time to pick this up. Correct?
Yeah. Thank you. That's what I go for, man. It's like, any book I put out to the world, I 100 years after I'm gone. I want someone to be able to pick it up and then read it and be better off for it. Otherwise, for me, why write?
Yeah, totally. So let's get through. Let's go. How did Amit get on this pilgrimage, or how did it come up?
It's actually so that part's based on my life. When I was 25, my dad died, and he asked me to take his ashes to the Ganges, and I wasn't close to him, but I was with him the night he died, and I promised him I would. And so I went off to India, and I think I had like $3,000 or $3,500 to my name, and I was supposed to come home 3 weeks later. I came home 8 months later. Wow. I just basically wandered with a backpack. I went climb the Himalayas. I spent time at Dalai Lama's monastery. I just wandered around India. And through a series of events, that's a long story in itself. I ended up in Spain, walking this 550-mile long pilgrimage in Spain. And I knew nothing about pilgrimages. I'm not religious in any form. And I didn't even know at that time, this is pre-iPhone days. I didn't know. I didn't even know if it existed. Someone told me about it, and they said, if you go there, this is a thing that people used to do to find themselves. And I was really lost at the time. And so I set out to find it, and I found it. Turns out it's actually very popular. Something like 100,000 people come from all over the world and walk it, and most of them are not religious. They do for all sorts of personal reasons or spiritual reasons, or even just as a hike.
Wow.
But the kind of person who comes to a foreign country and walks in a pilgrimage that people have been walking since the 11th century, is not your average person. So you walk in this thing every day. You get up and you're walking through a country. You're walking through cities and towns and deserts and mountains and vineyards and wheat fields for days and days and days. And, you start sharing with each other the stories of your lives, and you really learn from each other. Small talk just ceases to exist, and you just go into like the real stuff. And you can't help but be transformed by the time you reach the Santiago de Compostela, which is the city where it ends, so basically the route runs from one end of Spain to the other in northwest, from the French-Spanish border to basically Atlantic Ocean. And so I ended up doing that. And so when I was looking to write this book, what better story to tell than as someone who's lost and is trying to find his way, and he's walking this path. So it's a step-by-step journey, which is anything, man. Entrepreneurship, building anything, you name it. And what he learns along the way and how he starts to grow and who he is by the end. So that was, I took that part of my life and crafted the story around that.
And the relationship between Amit and his father in the book, does that parallel your personal experience?
Yes. It was a very difficult relationship. My parents are divorced. I didn't grow up with my father. So I had to learn to really say goodbye to him after he was gone. and deal with the emotions and memories left behind, how to resolve them after it was gone. And a lot what I learned and do that was actually on that pilgrimage.
Because 25 is young to lose. Like, here's the the lack of correlation. Like, so for example, I'm 41. I have both my parents still alive. They're both 85. Like, they're both 85 or something like that. They're 84, 85. I don't even know what it's like to lose one parent, right? And so I also don't know what it's like to have a discord relationship with a parent. So I pulled the lucky straw on that one, right? And your book kind of dives deeply into that friction relationship that you had, and how was Amit going to live life moving forward is one of the operating, and who's to blame for, I don't know the best way to ask the question, but you had a great point where you talk about how you viewed your dad. There's like three parts of you: as a child, as a son, and now as an adult.
Yeah, as a man. Yeah.
Can you go into that a little bit more?
Sure. And actually, really, the point of that, using that relationship, was not just it's only for people who have son and father relationship issues, right? Mm-hmm. It's for any human issues, because ultimately it comes down to forgiveness and letting go. And that's where we get personal freedom from. So that was the relationship I used in the book. But there were other relationships dealing with his ex-girlfriend and so forth. And it all comes down to forgiveness and self-forgiveness. And so the relationship with the father was, for him, it was a very strained relationship, where he didn't like his father. But yet, there is that thing when he's gone, you're left to deal with all these issues. It's like a breakup. It's like anything where we need to forgive and let go to be free. Right. So I used that relationship and I dove deep into it to show so that when you read the story, ultimately it's layering in the forgiveness and the freedom that comes from it, where he eventually has to forgive his father. And it's not lip service, because you walk through it, you understand, you start to see how he gets to that point. And I think that's the way to get to forgiveness for us, to forgive anybody in our lives, is how he does, what he learns and how he gets there.
So you've written 2 books now. One, Love Yourself.
3,
and I know, but I have not even Live Your Truth. I haven't read that, so I got to put that on my list and read it. Let's talk about forgiving yourself. And so, huge. So the reason I brought up the child, the son, and the adult, you could apply that to anything of like our experience as a child is we're coming up in this world. Other people are providing or supposed to be providing. We then become like the next chapter of our life, more independent. And then as an adult, we have the choice to look at the world and, as you write about it, rebirth or recreate what these events mean to us and how we want to live moving forward. I'll ask this anyway, and you can answer any way you want it. How do we forgive ourselves, and what are we forgiving ourselves for? And what do you see as most commonly? I mean, you work with entrepreneurs. You got on one side, the most successful VCs are your personal friends and founders. Mm-hmm. And all the way over to the other side, you have average Joe and Jane, who all of these people deal with human issues, right?
Yeah, we're still human beings.
Right.
Evolved monkeys of that.
And no one talks about forgiveness like you do and Love Yourself. It's like soft topics that make transformational waves. So let's go deeper on that, Yeah,
so one of the things I think that maybe perhaps makes me different is I don't write anything from theory. Everything I write is from my personal experience, lessons I've learned. I work very, very hard on myself. Like, if there's anything that I have going for me, is always work insanely hard on myself to be better in any way I can. The only thing that gets in my way is myself, which is, which I do often as well. And so these things, loving yourself, that came from a really hard experience in my life when I hit bottom, and it was in a very dark place, and it was literally in a desperate attempt to save my life, to save myself from not taking my life. If I'll just be honest, and that's what came out of that, and that changed my life. And so I wrote about that from my personal experience, but I want to share it not in a, hey, look, I learned to love myself, you should too. Like, that helps no one, right? It was more like, this is what I did. This is exactly what I did step by step.
Right.
So I think that's what where I come from. So it's soft, but keep in mind, I'm a guy who's built startups, right? So I'm very much about practical. I'm very much about getting things done. I only care about results. I really don't care what gets you there, as long as it gets you there, right? Like, I don't care what you believe, as long as you're living what you want to be living. So the Love Yourself is practical. The Live Your Truth, the book, it was also another designed to be practical, but more meditative. And same here. It's soft topics, but they're fundamental, I think, to our being our best selves.
Yeah.
At least in the way I try, and in a very practical way. If that makes sense.
It does, but can you give us an example or two?
Yeah, example for like in Love Yourself, I actually outlined step by step exactly what I did to go from a guy who was suicidal and sick and depressed and hating himself to get to the point where actually he considers life magical. Right? I did literally step by step. This is what I did. Step 1 is I can recreate it. Step 2, like you would if you're writing a spec for an app. How do you make an app with this app? There's step 1, do this, do that. That's exactly what I did. Plus, thoughts on why I think it works.
So today, okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot, buddy. Putting you on the spot. So today, someone's like, the winter blues are here. I'm having one of those rough days, blah, blah, blah. I would love to have a step 1 today. Like, what is a step 1 that I can take away from the podcast with Ed and Kamal to love myself more than I did 20 minutes ago? Okay.
One very simple is, there's a question that I actually, it's actually a question the character in the book learns. Often, we spend our time, we don't realize we're answering questions in our head without even realizing it. It's a question that someone teaches him. If I loved myself, what would I do? It's a very simple, a very powerful question. And here's the most powerful part of it. If.
Yeah.
Right? Because most of us don't believe we love ourselves. We were never trained that way. It's kind of sad, but our minds kind of run around and, in this primal, waiting for the lion to attack, but there's no real lions in our life. But we just always these minds haven't involved with the modern world and go down these negative loops. So start with, if you're in the winter blues, you don't have to believe that you love yourself. You don't have to believe you feel good, but just start with, if I love myself, what would I do?
Love it.
And that question is practical. That question, if you do it, it transforms your life. When you sit down and have a meal, if you're actually you're trying to be healthy and you're out and your friends are ordering big things of fried this and fried that and, milkshake this and milkshake that. And you ask yourself, if I love myself, what would I do?
Yeah.
Really, truly, if you love yourself. If, right?
Yeah.
And then answer that and then apply it. When you sit down to what you consume, to who you have in your life, to actually what you watch on TV, anything that you're putting inside yourself, whether it's media information or food or people around you, if you ask that question and you apply it, that is so practical to change your life.
You do have this in the book, and I think there's even one I'm looking for right now is
and I actually have him then start to apply it. And actually, that's what starts guiding his pilgrimage.
Yeah, and isn't that when doesn't Kat or doesn't one of the other characters ask him that? Like, hey, if I love myself, here it is, right? She stopped and chuckled. Would you like to hear it? Very much. Here.
That's the French woman.
If I loved myself, would I do this? You're right. I said that's so simple. And notice the question is if. It never assumes that I do, just if. And you could apply this. I don't know. I don't know where this came from, but I was like, if God. Did you do this in here where I was like, if God really loves me, what would he want me to do?
Yeah.
And if you go down a really positive framework on that. And here is where I applied it. I'll tell you where I thought of it. And actually, with decisions I'm making today within our own business, it's like there's this, in my book, I call it the societal obligation trap. You start falling into well, I'm a CEO and I run this company. We have this many employees. And then you start making all the decisions through that lens, right? When in reality is at the end of the day, you're just somebody who can create whatever it is that you want to create. At the beginning of our call or our conversation, we were talking about how you're an author and you're a VC and you're a former soldier and you're a friend. And, it's so we box ourselves into these things
Yeah.
But when we make these hard decisions in business, sometimes it could be as simple as like, if I was really loving myself in this situation, what would I do? It raises the energy of the whole question to be something that's really coming from a higher place, right?
It really does. And I think also another key thing, which is why I wanted to do this book in a pilgrimage, because it's step by step, you're actually walking, journey, there's a consistency to the way he has to apply the lessons he's learning. Because in life, all magic, every great thing comes from consistency. It's like, dude, you're in great shape. You work out, right? Do you go to the gym once a year?
No.
Do you eat healthy once a year? Right?
No, right,
it's consistency,
yeah,
right?
That's right.
Bring a great parent. You're my role model to be your parent.
Oh, you're sweet. Thank you.
You really are. It's a daily. I think it's like a minute. That is a consistent thing, right? It's
I always
a great parent.
Yeah.
So.
You know what's funny? I'll tell you, like when I'm with Mark Devine, who's my Navy SEAL, the Commander Mark Devine, a SEAL fit, and then who else did I say it to? David Goggins. I had on the show in the last month, and I jokingly said to both of them, I said, "Hey man, I know if you really want to test your mental toughness, just come to my house between the hours of 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. And
I'm actually going to do that. You told me that.
Yeah, just help out in the kitchen and hang out with the kids and see how mentally tough you are, because everything that's going to test you is going to happen in that space and time."
So, dude, all the great things come from consistency. So you take a question, right?
Yeah.
Simple question, if I love myself, what would I do? And start consistently applying it in your life, it'll transform. But if you do it here and there, the results will be here and there.
Yeah, I love it. I'd speak kinder to myself. I'd treat others better. Yeah. I'd choose better friends. In business and in life now, whereas 7 years ago, I would go to networking meetings or I'd go to seminars or I'd go places because, quote unquote, I should, because there might be people to network with. Nowadays, man, you'd have to have a high recommendation and it would have to make sense for me to exit my crew of 7 kids, my wife, to go spend 24 hours or 48 hours somewhere else. The framework is based around that whole question, which is, if I love myself, why would I ever put myself in an environment where I'm not meeting the highest quality people who there could be really a positive collaboration? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. You're living it. It's like all these things, man, all the fun, the things that really transform our lives are simple things. They just have to be applied consistently. We all know what it takes to be healthy, to be in shape. I mean, there's enough information out there, but one's just got to do it consistently.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so I'm going to take you to page 69. I'm trying to figure out the guy here because there seems to be a lot of drinking on the Camino. Is that fair assessment?
Yeah, that's based on me. But also, look, you're in Spain.
Yeah.
Across the country, and you're every night you get to a restaurant, you go out for a meal, and you can get a cheap meal for a few bucks.
Yeah.
It involves the first course, second course, dessert, and you used to have a choice, either a bottle of water or a bottle of wine. So every pilgrim, but basically pilgrims a bunch of drunkards just walking their way across Spain, most of them.
Well, in some ways, in some ways, in fairness, even though I drink in very moderation now, but you're 25, you're on a pilgrimage, you're walking 30 miles a day. Why not? You're gonna walk it off tomorrow and probably be ready for it by the evening. So, what I love was a lot of the conversations over wine. I mean, so many of the great conversations were, after, during, but there's a quote, and I'm trying to see who told you this. I thought it was a guy. He drains the wine, lets me refill it. Old wankers. Age-wise, he must be the oldest pilgrim in the refuge by far. But then he says, people, they don't live. You go off for 5 years and see the world and you return, and they're still the same. Driving to work. He makes a robotic gesture, stiff arms around an imaginary steering wheel. Drinking their tea. You know what it says to me? They're waiting to die. Bleeding bores. Life is short. We've got to take it, live it. And then there's more stuff too. What I loved about this was it so hit me in the face of My wife and I always say, oh, we need to travel more. We need to do more. We need to be more worldly exposed. And then we're like, we'll just wait. We always wait. Even though I think we do a decent job. But, in the big picture, so this right here describes the average American person who are just going that 8 to 4, 9 to 5 grind, wake up in a box, live in a box, sleep in a box. I don't know if this was based on a real person, first of all, but can you give us some...
This was actually based on a character and a guy I met on the walk, and he was in his 70s. It was an English guy. So it's not even the average American. I think it's just the average human, seems to be.
Yeah.
And, and if you think about it, we live at a time, and the resources we have, with the ability to travel and see the world. I mean, look, a few generations before, you just stayed in your village. If you left, you went to a village nearby. That was your life, right? You didn't just hop on a plane and then you were all of a sudden somewhere completely different. What we have with this ability to travel is a modern luxury. It's a beautiful modern luxury. And it only makes you better. A lot of my growth has come from my travel.
And your filters expand. So with the other thing with the book is that... And was this your first time really traveling? Or, I mean, how much did you travel when you were in the military?
I saw Fort Benning, I saw Fort Drum, I saw Fort Devens. It was all stateside. So this was actually my first real travel, and it was 8 months with a backpack. So
this is your first exposure. And the Camino is built into a couple different things. You said the life, the death, and the rebirth, which is kind of metaphorically for your book. In the book, Amit wants to skip the part where it's death from Burgos to Leon. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And why is that? Just before we give the punchline of Loic says to him, but Loic warned me against following the herd. Death, he said, has its own lessons to teach. So why is Amit considering skipping that part? And then where does this Loic character come in and give this wise lesson?
Well, the way the Camino is, and I think, also like in some ways, if you look at a screenplay, it's a 3-act structure, right?
Yep.
And so I divided the book into 3-act structure: life, death, rebirth, which is exactly what someone once told me the Camino was divided into. And the death part is actually in a part of Spain that's just miserable to walk through. It's just hot, it's like steaming hot during the day and miserably cold at night, and it's just flat. And so they call that, that basically that part death. And also when you walk through, it's just barren, where you just come from these lush woods and vineyards. It's just barren, and it's just, the villages look barren. But it's actually, you get to see how actually it grows in that part as well.
Right.
And I wanted to show, because one of the key things about this book is my hitting bottom, and what happens when we decide to rise from there. That's where we actually find our personal greatness. It's something I really believe in, and I've actually noticed with pretty much every amazing person in my life. They've been through a personal bottom, and that's where they rose out of to become who they really are.
Right.
And so part of death is that, and I wanted to show about we don't run. It does us no use to run away from the hard stuff, because if life is taking to the hard stuff, there is some serious growth there, because we will come out of that into the next side, and the next side is rebirth. That's where the phoenix is born, but the phoenix cannot be born without the ashes.
So like in my book, Time Collapsing, I have a whole chapter on death as an ally. That's why I love this, because...
awesome.
Yeah, like how do we utilize death as an ally? And this book is very reflective in the sense that it forces you to ask the hard questions, the real hard questions.
Like the samurai, right? Meditate on the death every day.
Yeah. For yourself and like what you see, like when I don't know how the best way to ask this question, so I'll just kind of throw it out there is, what would you say is the death part of the book, or even the death of your dad, when you finally came out of it and you put meaning to it? What did it give yourself to move forward as a better, more powerful human being?
It led to forgiveness, and the forgiveness frees you. It's really that simple, man. And it was.
So were you blaming yourself? I mean, honestly, was this like, is this a blame game?
Like there were things I held against my father, and I was blaming myself for not being there for him when he was dying, and all of that I had to come to terms with after he died, without him there. And I think it's with any journey, man. At any end, like sometimes we don't get resolution with the person, so we have to come up with the resolution ourselves. And that's one of the reasons I wrote this book, was to show that, look, we can have personal transformation just on our own by incorporating like these key life things, key life lessons, like this question and so forth. And once we reach forgiveness, and, we're the ones who are free, who ends up being free. We're the ones who's been tied down by our own, whatever we're holding on to. No one else is tying us down.
Yeah, totally. I love it.
I mean, really, it's such a simple thing. But, it's one thing to hear it intellectually, another thing to actually experience it and practically do it, which is why I write these books.
So in the books, you and I have had a conversation off this. I mean, as an author, so this question kind of goes from an author perspective. The beauty about writing a book, and by the way, I think just like the Camino, writing the book, and I thought we were going to touch on this before we started when we were talking about being an author. Someone asked me when I was writing, after I wrote Time Collapsing, they said, in the past year, what was your favorite book? And I said, well, Time Collapsing.
I love it.
Well, but here's the thing, not because it's not done. Actually, it's still evolving. But I said, honestly, I go, you know why it was my favorite book? Because I was forced to work so hard on it that it made me really have to figure out the truth of some of these lessons and the research and all that stuff. The process was way more important than the end goal. Correct?
Very, very true. It's like when you apply yourself to anything, especially when you're like sharing your, yourself, your life lessons, you got to go be in it. Otherwise, it shows up. A reader can tell.
And so one of the things knowing this with you, and one of the things you said to me that was, I thought, pretty profound was, you're like, Ed, the beauty is you can, as an author, go back, write the story from your future self with that perception. And as I was reading this book, Loic, your character in the book, I wrote a note. I was like, you know what? Is Loic, is he even real, or is that Kamal's future self in the book? Because he seemed to be a wiser / comrade that you bumped into along the way.
If you think about it, like...
Am I asking you to reveal behind the curtain?
No, I'm not going to share anything. There's no secrets there. Like, I walked this pilgrimage many, many years ago. So these characters are based on people I met.
Yep.
And some are made up completely. But even when it's people I met, but what I've done is I've taken the personalities that I remember and then created characters that serve the story out of it. I took maybe some dialogue, some things I remember they said, but all of this is just me being the writer. Stories that some are like the cat stories. I try to make them very accurate to a story someone told me years ago. But these are all fundamentally, when you write a story, it's not just what happened. It's like every single thing has to serve the story and move the character forward.
Right.
There's so much that I cut. Right, that was great, but doesn't move the story forward. It doesn't necessarily belong in the themes of the book. Loic is based on someone it was a French friend I had. It was this I met on the pilgrimage and I hung out with him in Paris, and he was a French sailor, this French captain. Really, just what you imagine a French guy to be like. Really, like just loved women, loved good wine and food, and he kind of like took me under his wing, like this lost American kid in his 20s, and he's like, I'm going to civilize this American. He taught me like how to like appreciate good cheese. He taught me how to open a bottle of champagne properly. Like all these things, sit around having amazing wine and we talk about women, and it was like exactly what you like imagine a great Frenchman to be. So I took him and as almost as like a homage to him, I built this character in the book.
Yeah, that's cool. He's a great character in it. He seemed to love you. I should actually just say that. That's my expression, I could say. Man, the reason why I think my listeners, it's funny. It's hard interviewing a guy who wrote a fiction book on reality because I don't want to give too much away as I'm asking these questions. But one thing I think my listeners will love is on page 105, you bump into a minister and you ask the question that I think all human beings ask at some point in life, which is, if there's a loving God, then why does suffering exist? I mean, that's like asking the open-ended question of the universe. So, Kamal, what is your interpretation of that? What is the answer? What is the answer of that?
I mean, the answer to that question?
Yeah.
Actually, even the minister tells him he doesn't have the answer. But he says, why don't you ask? Here's a better question to ask. I think ultimately we all have to decide what the answer is for ourselves, whatever our belief is. But the minister asks him something else, which is actually very, very practical. It does change things for him.
Which I'm going to give away a little bit. He says, well, try this. Ask, now what? Now that this has happened, what do I do? And, let's get a little deeper on this, right? So your really good friend, James Altucher, and my future good friend, James Altucher, I received his book yesterday. I got 2 of his books. They're,
Choose Yourself and...
No, I don't know why I got 2 of his books. I must have ordered 2 of his books, but I got 2 separate packages. My kids open anytime. Okay, so here's another parenting trick. Anytime there's, unless you're getting like Penthouse or Playboy, which I don't even know, that does not come to my house. Yeah, I send that to my neighbors and then he passes it over. No, I'm kidding. No, but like the kids are so now, it's amazing. We live in an Amazon.com world where like packages come like every other day. And that my 5-year-old runs over and says to me, oh, Dad, can I open it? And I said, sure, of course. And she goes, your astronaut book is here. It's because the cover of James's new book is Reinvent Yourself, right? And it has an astronaut on it. So she called it the astronaut book. So it's pretty comical.
It's a great book. I was reading it last night, actually. I fell asleep reading it.
It is a great book. And, one of the things that he mentioned in there, what I love about what he did is he talks about just a lot of randomly different people, which I think is actually an amazingly cool way to write a book. But he talked about one of our, and I'm getting full circle to my question, right, on suffering, which is I noticed he interviewed Wayne Dyer. Well, Wayne Dyer is one of my greatest virtual mentors of all time. So this first thing this morning, I went back into YouTube and found James Altucher and Wayne Dyer interview. And, one of the things that Wayne says was he believes that he had a conversation, and this goes to the topic of suffering and life purpose and mission, right? Because those are big questions. He said, I really believe I had a conversation with God before I was put here. And God said, well, what do you want to do in this lifetime? And I said, I want to learn self-reliance. And then God said, all right, cool. Then I'm going to put your little ass in an orphanage and you're going to learn self-reliance. And then his whole life became teaching that thing. And so, yeah.
Oh, cool. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty deep stuff. In fact,
what a great frame. I mean, even if you don't buy it, what a great frame to come from. It's such an empowering frame.
It's kind of like saying, if I loved myself, what frame would
that frame and you don't fight it. You don't feel any misery or it's like, oh well, yeah. And then you come from there. It takes something that could be disempowering and makes it empowering. I love it.
Well, because I'm planning on interviewing my mom, who's 85 years old and has 13 kids, and one of my siblings, died at the age of 16.
Wow.
And then check this out. This was before I was even born. This was between probably a year and a half prior to me being born. And my mom is in a weird phase. And I say weird, and I don't mean weird, but like I don't, that's really another way of saying I don't know how to describe it, but she knows she's not going to live forever. And so when I spend time with her and my dad, she likes talking about death all the time. Like it's just all the time. So at my funeral, this is going to happen. One of the things she was telling me about just last week was how Jesus is her friend and how Mary and Joseph are her friend. Now we're Catholic, so they do the Trinity, or is that the Trinity? No, that's not the Trinity. Yeah. That's the Holy Family, right? The Holy Family is a big deal to my family. And my wife had asked a great question, and she said, you mean even after, and I think she just did this knee-jerk response, which was, that's coming from a woman who lost her child. Uh-huh. And I really can't wait to ask her that question. But she must have some kind of frame, to use that word. Yeah. That really works probably for everybody if they adopted it. if it was, or for a lot of people anyway.
And a lot of these frames are, our belief or whatever we want to call it. Right?
Yeah.
I use the word frame because that means that anyone can accept it. They don't have to buy into the belief.
And it's flexible.
Yep. This is not going to work for me. But if you say it's a frame, then that's all it is. Then it'll work for you. It just creates something empowering. That's amazing, right? And I think we all do that, when we go through life. We all, no one gets out of here. First of all, no one gets out of here alive. And no one gets out of here without some sort of suffering. We're human beings. You could be the richest guy in the world, but you know pain. The emotion of pain, the feeling of heart pain. That's part of being a human being. But how we frame that, and we can either make it just destroy us, or we can make it empower us. That's our choice.
Yep.
Right. And when you frame it properly and you empower yourself, that's great things come out of that. I was talking with someone earlier today. What I thought when I was younger, what my weaknesses, it turns out my greatest strengths. I just wish I had framed it that way when I was younger. I would save myself a lot of misery.
Totally. And here's the thing. Here, let me ask this question. So you're being around very successful guys, whether financially or I think one of the cool things about some of our mutual friends, and even what you're doing, man, what I love what you're doing, is you get to play entrepreneur, VC on one side and artist on the other side, right?
Yeah.
Do you pinch yourself? I mean, do you realize that? That's very unique. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, because whenever I meet people and they find out I'm a VC, and I say I've written books, they expect my books to be about venture capital. I'm like, no, man, that serves no one 100 years after I'm gone. And it really surprised me the books that I write. Which are nothing about building startups.
Yeah.
About the inner game. But ultimately, it's the inner game that defines everything.
And I guarantee you've never been asked this question, so I'm going to ask it because it just came to me, right? So, but you're also you have a very, your feminine spirit is very strong, and I say that I know this is gonna be I don't even know where the hell that came from. Man. No, that was the comment. But I'm just curious on the, Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, who's married to one of my friends, Jesse Itzler, and I've met Sarah a couple times, and she's great in person, just as great as she is on video, because she's phenomenal on video. One of the comments she made, and I don't know if it was in an interview or if it was, I think it was in an interview, maybe with Lewis Howes, is that she mentioned that when her business was growing, and others would come around, they're like, well, this is a hard game. This is a kill or be killed business. Business is death or nothing. It was a very, very, very alpha male, masculine, let's go kill people to win. And she, at that point, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but to her energetically, that didn't work at all. So she set out to do this thing with her own feminine energy and whatever. And I don't say that because men have both energies. So unless you don't realize that, not you, Kamal, but if people in general don't realize it's good, you're showing, hey, you could be soft and be very, very successful, and you could be soft and simultaneously be sharp as a dagger, in a different way. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but am I making any sense?
You make perfect sense, man. Look, startup world, right? It's pretty much male driven, right? Silicon Valley. There's more women there now, but in all honesty, it's a very we're killing it kind of culture. Everyone puffing their chests out kind of thing, and which I'm not a fan of because it's not the truth.
It's so not the truth.
And ultimately, I think
that's
when you
such a good way of putting it.
People is actually when you connect with them.
Yeah.
When they actually want to help you, versus, and I've been in business for a while. I've been screwed over by partners and so forth. But it's part of the story, right? Part of the business. It just happens. But does that mean you go around screwing other people over? No. Is business kill all? No. Actually, the best business people I know usually do win-win.
Yeah.
It's just the ones who are loud, the ones who are insecure, the ones who are fear-based. Those are the ones they're not the ones, maybe they're outliers that stand up, but the most long-term successful business people I know, people who are actually consistently successful, actually are good hearts. Have like a side that takes care of their people. Like you don't attract the best without being that way. So like I think maybe I see some of that Wall Street kind of people, but I have a bias against Wall Street. I don't think they create anything. I like builders, people who take something like an idea and build a business out of it, have products out there, right? That's entrepreneurship. That's what made this country great. That's what economic freedom is. You take it, you have an idea, and you create a business, you create a service or a product or a movement. You have to have heart there. If you're gonna have employees and you're gonna make, people working for you and build something large from nothing. I think a lot of that other stuff is garbage, and people get lost in it. I think it's a fallacy. It's just it's a myth that needs to go away.
Yeah, I totally.
Follow her own gut. Look at her. There's an example, right?
Well, I mean, here's the other side of it, man. Like with social media nowadays, if you're smashing people down or trying to do that hostile, frame, and that's really coming out of a lose-lose paradigm, by the way, because that can get very lonely. I've met very successful people who are very lonely. So that's a rough way of going. But nowadays we're kind of in that we're in that transparency age, where to say like where if you have something great, you can get access directly to consumers simply by posting things on Facebook or Instagram.
Dude, you're the best time for this. There's in everything, right? There's a positive and a minus. Because often Facebook just feels like it's someone's highlight reel, like everyone's living like a rock star. No one posts photos of them sitting on the toilet just crying and eating ice cream at the same time on the toilet. Where's that photo? I want to see that on Facebook. No, you see all like they're all partying and they're doing this and everyone's living a great life, which is a negative. But the positive is because we have this reach. You can reach out to the world through these platforms and really share who you are, what you're doing.
Totally.
Which didn't exist before. That's a very modern luxury. Like a decade ago, to create your media brand, you need to go through middlemen. A decade ago, to publish a book, you need to go through. Love Yourself would never have been published by a publisher because I made it really short on purpose.
Yeah.
I wrote the book. I wish someone had given me when I was down.
Totally.
Right. And that's a short and to the point book. Not like hundreds of pages of just filler, right? No publisher would have published this. So what did I do? I self-published this in the biggest bookstore in the world, which is Amazon, right? That didn't exist 10 years ago. Now, Rebirth, I published it with a traditional publisher because this kind of story, Amazon will only take you so far. I wanted to go around the world. They're going to publish in Italy, in Italian. They're going to publish in Spain, in Spanish, in Portuguese, in Portugal, which is, that's a different level I wanted for this kind of story. But those barriers that existed don't exist anymore. So there really is no excuse for not putting your product or your service or who you are out there. I just think because of everyone's highlight reels everywhere, people will tune you out if all you do is just become another highlight reel. But when you're real in yourself, you don't need to put up photos of you crying on the toilet, but just real in yourself and your product, you'll do very well.
So what is your so you're promoting the book right now? You're out promoting the book.
I'm not doing some massive launch or anything.
Yeah. Well, you're busy running. You're also I was going to. What are you doing nowadays? So like you got the book. You got. I'll let you tell us what you're doing. I can lead you a little bit.
So I run a VC fund. So I look for opportunities in the startup world and I invest in startup companies. So it's a lot of meeting with companies, and then it's also helping the companies I invest in, and then I advise companies. And I'm raising my next venture fund, and I'm also doing like some other stuff with James Altucher, which is all but it's all around startup investment. Because I've been doing startups long enough, I understand I'm really good at it, I enjoy it, and I get to play with the future. That keeps one part of my brain occupied, and the other part is this creative part, which if I was to use the Wayne Dyer thing, which is what I was put this earth for, was to write books that actually just change lives, that make lives better. That when I'm gone, like long after I'm gone, they're still there having their own ripple effect. So I do that, and then I do the other thing, which is the day job, which both of them are by choice. Both of them I spent a long time building, and both of them I'm very grateful for.
Which leads me to probably one of the last questions I have for you. Your book's on love, forgiveness, and following your heart.
Yeah.
What would be one or two little takeaways for my audience on following your heart?
I think following your heart, it's something we hear often. We see on Instagram quotes and tweets and stuff. But unless it's practical, it means nothing. Unless it changes your life, it means nothing. I think in following your heart, like that question, if I love myself, what would I do? It will lead you to where your heart needs to go. It'll bypass all the other stuff, all the fears. Because often, something I've learned is that often that when we are scared of something, it's actually what we should be doing.
Totally.
When we get stopped. But then this kind of question really helps. If you ask yourself, if I love myself, well, what would I do? I'll be honest with you, something that you and Vinny, who's a dear friend of ours, one of the smartest human beings and best human beings we both know, 2 years ago, I think Vinny got together with me and said, you need to start putting yourself more out there and you need to have a social media presence. And I was always like poo-pooing it because I don't like putting myself out there too much. I wanted to share my work, right? And yet, I've been asking myself that question lately, and I realize every time I share of myself, including my work, first of all, it helps get my work out there, but I get all this feedback from people that whatever life experience I have to share actually helps them. So I went out and started a Facebook page, and it's actually growing, and I'm doing these things, and I'm doing it because I asked myself this question. And you know what? Honestly, they scare me. Like putting myself more out there, they scare me, right? So that was stopping me. And then I asked myself this question, and I actually followed through, and it actually turned out to be wonderful.
Love it. Love it.
So to follow your heart, I think that simple question helps. The other one, the what now, right? Which was one, if, we can get stuck in why something's happening or trying to figure it out, or just like, okay, this is happening, now what? And ultimately the book, it's about, what the monk tells the guy in the beginning about how he finds peace by saying yes to life. Ultimately, this book is about saying yes to life, which allows us to move forward, and which is actually where the magic happens. It doesn't mean saying yes to life and sitting on your butt and just saying yes. It means saying yes to life and taking action. So that's all following your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What is one ritual or habit you're doing on a daily basis that really works for you?
I meditate. Very short, like a hack that I put together. It's like an 8-minute meditation that I wrote about in the Love Yourself book.
Oh, wow.
I do that every day.
Nice.
And I notice, man, if I don't do it for a while, my life starts to slide. If I do it, my life just seems to get better and better. It's always from the inside out, man. It's who we're being inside affects our outside.
And
no matter what your frame of life is.
What are you envisioning for yourself 3 years from now and pulling back to today? Like, what are you putting into your future? Like, what? Yeah, that's my question.
That's a great question. I'm really bad at that. Long-term visualization. I just think of things. I'm like, okay, what do I want to do next? And I do that. And it's something I need to learn, actually, is how do I do like this long-term, the way actually but if I was to just like right now dream happily, like what makes me feel good would be like just writing more books and investing with something exactly what I'm doing.
You're doing it.
Maybe in a bigger scale, because you get challenged more. The bigger, that's life is about growth. If you're doing anything, eventually you're building a business, you want to do it at a bigger scale. So just that.
Yeah, I love it.
And honestly, I'm single, and I look at you, and I look at your life, and like I look at your kids, and I would like that. That's a part of my life that I don't think I don't have any. Without kids, I think I'm going to miss out on a certain level of growth that I don't think you can have unless you have kids.
Yeah, that's well, there's a lot of growth that comes with it at multiple levels. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I agree with that, but I would say I definitely, my life, the one phrase I started using was that the rules that worked for me 10, 11 years ago when we had one or were just starting out, or even then go back 12 years ago when I wasn't a father yet, the rules that worked for me then had to evolve or change over time. Like, there's no way I could be the same man I was then to happily, like talk about frames. I mean, what parenting and like marriage is a lot is how do you adopt a new frame to best support the situation that you're in? Because you're a better parent prior to being one. And you're probably you are. And you're a better spouse probably than prior to becoming one, because you just don't know. There's so much you just don't know. And, it's, so yeah, there's tons of growth there. So, it's in you. If it's in your vortex, buddy, I know you're going to pull it. So make it happen, and all the right people will show up at the right time. So I love it. It's exciting. Last two questions. Who do you study or go for guidance to, whether it's virtually or, let me do that. Who do you study or go to virtual guidance to? So we'll leave if you have like your own little inner circle like that you call, or you can share whatever you want. But what do you go for? What's your system for getting clarity and answers?
Honestly, to get clarity and answers, I go within myself.
Awesome. Love it.
I mean, the meditation does that.
Yeah, love it.
It's a great practice just for that. Like for mentorship, I've always just gone off and studied the greats in whatever I wanted to get involved in. So, for example, for writing, I just obsessively read and reread Hemingway for years, taking apart his every sentence he wrote to see how he did what he did, to feel it.
Huh.
Right? And then other writers I love, but Hemingway was the one I started with, and you can see his influence in my writing because it's very simple, very clean. Which is the writing I love. So outside of that, dude, you becoming a big part of my life. I come to you.
Oh, you're sweet.
It's true. I'm very fortunate with the quality of people I have in my life. We're just, amazing human beings, and they're ballers in their whatever respective things they're doing. Like, for example, if I have questions on, diet and exercise, I just call him Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, I thank God you didn't say me. I would say, come on. I think I've misled you. I do work out, but my diet's awful.
Yeah, look, whenever I hang out with Tim, I'm like, dude, what supplements are you taking? I just go take photos of them and just order them off Amazon.
I know.
Because I'm like, if Tim's taking it, it's already been researched up the wazoo. There's no need for me to look into it.
You just gotta make sure Tim's not experimenting with like increasing his estrogen at the moment, because you might get confused when you.
Like, look, if you want to be in amazing shape, I don't want to look. I go to the gym, right, and I'm in better shape than pretty much anyone, say, who's much younger than me.
Yep.
I take care of myself, so I don't want to take fitness advice from a 20-year-old. 20-year-old, you just go lift something stupidly, you'll get in shape. Right? I want to take advice from someone way older than me who's in amazing shape, and that's the guy I want to learn from. Right?
Yeah.
There's a guy named Art Devaney I met years ago. Meeting him changed my life. He was in his late 60s, early 70s. He's the one that basically came with the whole concept that paleo is built on. And he's a brilliant economist. And I got to sit and have dinner with this man. He was like almost 70, I think, then, and very wise, very zen, smart, and chiseled. Wow. Right? Which is the, like, most 20-year-olds you'll see in a major gym in a major city, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is the example, right? It's easy for a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old to get chiseled, but show me a 70-year-old who's chiseled. That's the guy I want to learn from. So I was trying to go, if I can, go meet them, be around them in person. And that example of seeing it in front of you changes your life. Because once I met him, I was never the same, because I knew I could always be in great shape as I got older. I did not have that mental model before. I was actually letting myself go. I was getting a little bit of a belly, because that's what you do once you get to a certain point. No, you find out exactly how he lives and you live that way.
You know what's funny about that is, have I sent you? I told you about that. I'm an investor and actively supporting No Foods, KNOW.
Yeah. I've seen that on Facebook.
Oh my God! Well, it's the cleanest. It's the cleanest bread, waffles, donuts. You can put people who are, and I'm not. I have been very I guess I'm sort of paleo, But there's, people listening to this who are like hardcore paleo would be like, Ed, you're not paleo. You're not in range of it. Like, cause I like my pizza. I do, totally do. If I have a choice between gluten-free pizza and regular pizza, I'll do gluten-free. But anyhow, what was I saying? Oh, we were at a party recently and I walked in and I was hungry and I couldn't eat one thing. Like literally there was not one thing there. Here's why. Because I just want to feel good. Most of the time I want to feel good. And when I have my cheat meals, I like having my cheat meals. But
yeah, but you do buy it from a conscious place.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. So that I love that. So you're surrounding yourself. Okay, so we talk about health and wellness.
Like, look, for entrepreneurship or venture capital.
Yeah.
I learned entrepreneurship by just moving out of Silicon Valley with a one-way ticket and joining startups. I didn't know it before. I don't think you can teach anyone entrepreneurship. You just jump into it with others who are doing it.
Totally.
That's really all it is. I think a lot of times people do a lot of courses and this and that and try to prepare for something. Man, there's no substitute for just being thrown in it and you figure it. And be thrown in it, but now with people who are not good at it, be thrown in with people who are good at it. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, and one of the tricks there is if they're not willing to hire you, just start showing up and doing free work, or just seriously, just do free stuff. Because then if they bomb, don't worry about it. You're going to learn good, bad, and ugly pretty quickly just by being around. I mean, I think I don't know. Do you know Chris Sacca personally, or just through Tim's podcast?
Not personally.
But he was saying, I mean, what great investment advice. And I guess this is more my strategy. I know you have a different philosophy, but he was saying when he invested in Twitter, he just started showing up. And he wasn't even an employee. He was an investor. And so he would just start showing up at all the meetings and helping. And then when he was an employee at Google, he would just show up and tell people he was the note taker. So no one kicked him out of it.
That was really smart.
No one kicked him out of any of the meetings because he's taking notes.
That's brilliant, actually. That's absolutely brilliant. It takes initiative. It takes look. If it didn't take initiative, everybody would be a massive success.
Totally.
Totally. But it's a simple things. Note taker. That's brilliant. That is genius level brilliant. It's so simple.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's simple.
Simple.
And who's gonna throw a note taker out?
I know. Well, man, hey, I think we've reached beyond the time. Is there any last parting words or asks of my audience that you would like to share?
Yes, thank you for having me. If you want to read more about the book, you can, obviously it's, in your bookstores or Amazon. You can go to rebirthfable.com. There's
Love
a little bit about it there. And I hope you enjoy the book.
Awesome. Well, Kamal, I appreciate you. You're the best, my man, on so many levels. I love you too. And my audience, go get it. Go get it. We'll have Kamal on again in a year. And you know why? Because he's going to have another book. And then a year after that, he's going to have another book. He just doesn't know it yet. Or maybe he does. Do you know it? All right, Kamal. Have an awesome one, brother.
You too, man.
Thanks so much. Hey, it's Ed. Real quick. Hopefully you enjoyed that episode with Kamal Ravikant as much as I did. One thing I want to point out is I like making connections back to how I see patterns in some of my interviews and how either I would write in my book a little bit differently, add it to my book, or areas where I feel like something paralleled. So on page 82 in Time Collapsing, I have in there the partial map of the scale of consciousness by Dr. David Hawkins. And it goes through a lot of the different energy scales. Okay. If it's totally new for you, this is definitely something worth checking out. And if it's something that you're into, then definitely check it out. But it's on page 82 in my book, Time Collapsing, The New Art of Speed, Money, Power, and Meaning. And in this episode, you see so much, we talked so much about meaning and about how do you transform the experiences we've had in our past and move it forward towards the meaning stage so that we can use it as something really powerful. So anyhow, if you want a copy of that book, you can check it out at timecollapsing.com. That's timecollapsing.com. Totally, as of right now, we're giving it away totally free, and just pay shipping and handling, or you can check it out on amazon.com. So that's it. Oh, and then one more thing. Have you tried the waffles yet? Check out nofoods.com. That's KNOWFOODS.com. That's it. Hope you're awesome, and we will talk to you later. Bye.